If you ever visit New Orleans, you may find yourself touring one of the city's most iconic and famous cemeteries, St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. As the oldest surviving cemetery in New Orleans, its location was chosen for its undesirable swampy land and distance away from the boundaries of what we now call the French Quarter. The local government had to fine-tune laws regarding burials around the turn of the 19th century. Due to the constant threat of flooding, burials were mandated to be above ground. Although this law was not always enforced, this is where the iconic above-ground tombs come from. After the Louisiana Purchase and Haitian Revolution, the cemetery needed to adjust for the city's increasing population. St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 is a Catholic cemetery, but the cemetery expanded to make designated space for the influx of Protestants. Adjacent to the Protestants was a space for the slaves and free people of color. Oftentimes, these graves were unmarked. Eventually, the Protestants acquired their own cemetery and the graves were moved. After the Protestant graves were moved, the city decided to condense St. Louis Cemetery down to its current smaller boundaries and sell off the remaining land for building lots. But what about the graves of slaves and people of color? Fast forward 100 years. Building lots on the site came and went, and in the 1940s, the low-income Iberville housing project went into effect on the property. Another 60 years later, in 2005, Hurricane Katrina destroyed the housing development. Several years later, there was an attempt to redevelop the land, but as work began, the city ran into one big problem: bodies. Since the 1940s, new laws have been put into effect that protect human remains, particularly in the state of Louisiana. The project immediately came to a halt, and a team of archaeologists were brought in to survey the site. Sure enough, within the historic boundaries of St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, multiple human remains were found in various spots. Aside from one remaining building from the former Iberville housing project, the space surrounding St. Louis Cemetery has been left as an open green space. Due to its historic and cultural importance, St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1975. And in 2008, it was added to the African American Heritage Trail. Many notable people are buried in St. Louis Cemetery, several of whom are integral to African American cultural heritage in New Orleans as well as the rest of the United States. Homer Plessy of the landmark Supreme Court case of Plessy v. Ferguson, Ernest Dutch Morial, the first black mayor of New Orleans, and of course, arguably the most famous person in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, the legendary voodoo queen of New Orleans, Marie Laveau. Born as a free woman of color in 1801, she was both feared and respected within the community for her spiritual practice and philanthropic work. Other famous individuals include British American engineer and architect Benjamin Latrobe, chess master Paul Morphy, and Creole author and journalist Alexander Dmitri. And of course, famously, actor Nicolas Cage has purchased a pyramid-style tomb for himself upon his death. Alongside the popularity of St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, vandalism has caused several problems. Graves are under constant threat of defacing due to their popularity. Marie Laveau's tomb is a frequent target considering her association with voodoo practices. In 2013, Marie Laveau's tomb was painted pink. The Archdiocese of New Orleans and Save Our Cemeteries invested in a tedious restoration of the tomb, costing $10,000. The day after the reveal of the restored tomb, the grave site was marked yet again. The Archdiocese of New Orleans officially decided to close St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 to the public, now only allowing approved tour guides to bring people into the cemetery, apart from family members of the deceased. This, however, does not stop the over 100,000 tourists from visiting the cemetery annually. St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 continues to be one of the most visited tourist destinations in New Orleans. The iconic imagery of the cemetery, partnered with the generations of stories, solidify its importance in the deeply rooted culture that is New Orleans.